Hey guys, it's Logan Holmes. Well, I've done 2 worst lists, and I've done 2 episode reviews for the show. And I've done several DVD reviews, so might as well thought it is time to do, sorry about that, my top 10 best pre-movie SpongeBob episodes, which is seasons 1, 2, and 3. So yeah, I'm doing just the pre-movie SpongeBob, unlike Rugrats, where I did every single season separately. I'm gonna be combining these. I really think I probably should have combined a bunch of Rugrats seasons to review them. But yeah, here we go. Number 10. Nasty Pattie. Okay, so in this episode we have a health inspector comes to the Krusty Krab. So Mr. Krabs and SpongeBob have to give the health inspector everything on the menu. But whenever it comes down to a regular Krabby Patty, they find out that there is a fake health inspector. So they decide to make a patty called the Nasty Patty. And yep, it's pretty disgusting. But I mean, it's not like the splintered, gross out disgusting. It's just disgusting, and you know, it's not really disgusting. I mean, I was fine with it. But yeah. So then they give it to the health inspector. And then, you know, the health inspector, he chokes on, starts choking on a fly. And they think the health inspector is dead. Because, which they think it's a good thing. But then they find out that they got the wrong health inspector. That the wrong health inspector was a fake, and well, that was a real health inspector that they had there. So they had to bury him without the cops knowing. And then the cops come, and then they know nothing about it, and they have to and the cops take Mr. Krabs and SpongeBob back to the Krusty Krab to make them Krabby Patties. And then, you know, the cops don't know about the body, and they haven't buried the body. Well, they did bury the body, but he fell out. And then, because they decided to stick his head up while they bury him. And then, you know, they had to put him in the back of the police car, and, then they had to put the body in the freezer. And then they, eventually, they decide to confess. And then, turns out, the health inspector, well, we already knew this throughout the episode, but health inspector wasn't really dead. And he said that he locked it. So, yep, that's number 9. Crabborg. In this episode, SpongeBob watches a scary movie, and about robots, and then he thinks that what if that everyone he knows could be a robot. But then they think, Mr. Krabs starts acting strange, and then they think that he's a robot. So they try and, ask him, like, robots, cannot laugh, cry, or love. But then they test, bunch of stuff on Mr. Krabs. Like that one, they tell him a joke, like, why couldn't the, like, 11-year-old, or maybe 7-year-old, see the pirate movie? Because it was rated R. And, yeah, so then but Mr. Krabs, he doesn't laugh, he doesn't cry. And, like, he doesn't, he doesn't like, and they can't find out that he has, feelings of love, but then, they tie him up, and then they start asking him questions. Then they destroy a lot of things that Mr. Krabs, loves, but then they come down to his cash register, and then they find out that Mr. Krabs really isn't a robot. So, yeah. Number 8. Graveyard Shift. In this episode, the Krusty Krab decides to stay open. Well, Mr. Krabs decides to keep the Krusty Krab open 24 hours a day. And, and then SpongeBob is all excited about it, but Squidward, nope. He decides to tell SpongeBob a story about the sash ringing, the trash flinging, I can't even remember all those things SpongeBob said. The hash slinging slasher. So the hash slinging slasher was he used to be a fry cook at the Krusty Krab. So yeah, and then they Squidward, yeah. So then he used to be a fry cook at the Krusty Krab, and then and he chopped off his hand with the spatula, and then he got hit by a bus, and it killed him. So then and at his funeral they fired him, but then he comes back every Tuesday night up to the Krusty Krab to seek revenge. And there are 3 signs of the hash slinging slasher. The hash slinging slasher will, the phone will ring and no one will be there. First was the lights will flicker on and off. Second, the phone will ring and there will be nobody there. And then the hash slinging slasher will come in the bus. And then come into the Krusty Krab and seek revenge. But then Squidward tells SpongeBob shortly after that he made it all up. But then the lights are flickering on and off. And then the phone will ring. And then the phone rang and there was no one there. And then the bus came. And by the way, I forgot to mention about the hash slinging slasher uses a spatula as a hand. And then he gets off, there's this guy that gets off the bus. He has a spatula for a hand. But then they find out that it wasn't a hash-slinging slasher. It was a guy looking for a job. And he tried calling on the phone, but he hung up because he was nervous. And then they find out that the guy, you know, flickering the lights was this guy named Nosferatu. And also, by the way, he didn't have, he had a hand. It was down in his jacket where you couldn't see it. Number 7. I'm with stupid. So Patrick's parents are coming for a visit, and Patrick doesn't want them to think that he is dumb. So SpongeBob decides that he'll be the dummy. And then, you know, SpongeBob, you know, that his parents come, and then SpongeBob starts making all these, acting like really stupid. and then, you know, Patrick starts, you know, making all these jokes about him. And SpongeBob says, or tells Patrick to, you know, let off on the insults, which, you know, he agrees to. And you know, Patrick starts, you know, making insults, you know, to help SpongeBob make SpongeBob make himself look like a dummy. And then Patrick, you know, SpongeBob tells Patrick to let off on the insults, which, you know, he does make some insults, and SpongeBob goes out like, ah. And then they find out that that Patrick's parents' names are Janet and Marty. And then Patrick's like, Janet? Marty? Who are you people? And then Squidward finds, you know, Patrick's real parents, and he's like, they've been saying, where's Patrick all day? Number 6. Just one bite. So in this episode, SpongeBob finds out that Squidward doesn't like Krabby Patties, and the only people who don't like Krabby Patties are the ones who have never tried them. Which Squidward, he's never had a Krabby Patty. And SpongeBob tries to get Squidward to try a Krabby Patty, which he keeps saying no, which he finally does. And he gets a small bite, and then he's like, why, this is the most horrible, putrid excuse for a sandwich that has ever been in my, and I curse this Krabby Patty and all who enjoy them. But then Squidward really likes Krabby Patties. So then he orders a Krabby Patty. So then, you know, Squidward orders a Krabby Patty, and then, you know, and SpongeBob keeps asking, like, who ordered them? Like, you don't know who ordered them. And then Squidward says, why don't you leave it here, and, like, on you know, Squidward's by the cash register in case they come back. Which, you know, they do. Well, they don't come back. But then, so SpongeBob decides to eat it himself. But then Squidward finds a Krabby Patty in the garbage, and then he tries to eat them, but SpongeBob finds it, like, what's this Krabby Patty doing there? This Krabby Patty needs to be cremated, which he does. And then, Squidward tries, he's like, I've got to get a Krabby Patty, and no one's gonna stop me. And he runs into the Krusty Krab, and then we get this deleted scene, which was shown on the original airing of this episode, and was cut from reruns and on all DVD releases. Squidward goes in the Krusty Krab. He finds this security alarm up there, and then he thinks that it's a bucket of water. And he's like, that was too easy. And he's like, wait a minute, this isn't water, this is gas. And there's this robot that drops a match, and then there's this explosion. And then, Squidward enters, where the, enters the kitchen. And then which the same thing happens, that gas and then the fire, which this time we don't see a match, it's just the gas spills, and then there's just an explosion. And then Squidward finds and then we get to the part, and then the deleted scene is over, which we get to the part where Squidward finds the Pattie vault. And, SpongeBob's in there because he always comes there at 3 in the morning. And then, Squidward, starts eating all the Krabby Patties in the Pattie vault, and then SpongeBob's like, Squidward's like, what, am I gonna blow up? And SpongeBob's like, no, they'll go down to your thighs, and then you'll blow up, which he does. And then we catch, with, like his head is blown off. He in the ambulance with his head blown off. And there's his paramedic in there, and he's like, yeah, I remember my first Krabby Patty. Number 5. Dying for pie. So in this episode, it's some day at the Krusty Krab where they, Squidward and SpongeBob exchange gifts, so then SpongeBob gets Squidward a jacket made out of eyelashes, which Squidward doesn't like. So then Squidward has to get SpongeBob a gift. So he finds a pie, that it's being sold by pirates. So then, he got pirates, they're selling the pie, and then, Squidward decides, he gets a pie for, $20, I believe. And then, he gives, SpongeBob the pie. Well, Mr. Krabs just, tries the pie with, some milk, and then, he drops the pie, and then, boom, it explodes. And then, SpongeBob gets the pie that says, here you go, Squidward. So Squidward thinks that, and Mr. Krabs thinks SpongeBob's in the pie. And then Mr. Krabs is like, Squidward's like, let's call the hospital. And then Mr. Krabs is like, it won't do. I've seen it happen 11 times. So then Squidward calls the hospital he calls the hospital anyway, and then the hospital's like, it won't do. This has happened 11 times. So Squidward decides to give SpongeBob a part 2 to his gift. And then SpongeBob's like, part 2? And then, Squidward gives SpongeBob a day that he'll, a day, his last day, the best last day. And then, when it sunsets, SpongeBob will explode. So, SpongeBob wants to watch sunset after doing all this, after having that whole day. And then, Squidward's like, so Squidward builds a brick wall between him and SpongeBob. And then, this, sunset happens, and then, there's this, explosion. But then Squidward hears more than one explosion, and it turns out that SpongeBob is blowing bubbles that are bombs, as he does it whenever the sun sets. So then, as it turns out, SpongeBob didn't eat the pie. He saved it for him and Squidward to share. But then SpongeBob trips, and then the pie lands in Squidward's face, and then, boom. Number 4. Chocolate with nuts. In this episode, SpongeBob and Patrick decide to become entrepreneurs after, reading a magazine. And, they decide to sell candy bars. And, they sell they sell chocolate. And then they try selling chocolate to this one guy. And then he's like, and they're like, would you like to buy chocolate? And then he's like, did you just say chocolate? Chocolate? Chocolate! And, they go around selling chocolate to all these people, and then there's this one guy that gives them chocolate bar bags, and then chocolate bar carrying bags. And then there's this one guy who, so SpongeBob and Patrick later on pretend to be, that they're injured. And there's this one guy who pretends to be injured, and then, he's also injured, and then, he's injured, and then they decide to buy, his chocolate, but then he turns out he's the same guy that sold them the candy bar bags and the candy bar carrying bags. He's not really injured. And then they sell this one. I'm sorry, guys. Well, also the fish screaming chocolate. They eventually sell chocolate to him. And then also there's this one. They go to this girl's house, and then they're like, would you like to buy some chocolate? And then talking about, well, they're like, is your mother home? And then she yells, Mom, and she comes, she's in a wheelchair, and then she's like, I don't know, she's like really small, and I really don't know how to describe her. But then she's like, you just can't wait for me to die, can you? But then they sell them chocolate because it's not for eating. It'll, because, she hated chocolate. And then they're like, it's not for eating. You rub it on your skin, and it'll make you live forever. So then they sell them chocolate, and then they go on a date, and then they're like, and then, Squidward decides to go to this, the restaurant where they're having a date at, And then they're like, the whole restaurant is booked to some entrepreneurs and their dates. And one of them, I don't remember if it's SpongeBob or Patrick, but one of them asks, how long you've known each other, and then they're like, and then the mom is like, what did he just say? Number 3, Fools in April. I did a review on this episode, so I don't want to waste time talking about an episode that I've already talked about. But yeah, this is a good episode. I'll just sum it up quickly, because SpongeBob goes to this, SpongeBob, it's April Fool's Day, SpongeBob's favorite holiday. He plays April Fool's jokes on all these people. Hey guys, I apologize about what just happened. I really wasn't expecting to have to create a part 2. I'll probably combine the 2 videos with using video editor, but yes, someone called me from like a 311 area code. But I didn't answer it, but yeah, because I'm not gonna talk to whoever's trying to call me. But yeah, this episode, it's April Fool's Day, and then SpongeBob goes around, SpongeBob's favorite holiday. He goes on playing all these pranks on people, and Squidward decides to prank him back, which SpongeBob is in a really bad mood, and then, he eventually apologizes to SpongeBob, and everyone else is at SpongeBob's house. They yell, April Fools. It's a good episode. Number 2, the camping episode. In this episode, SpongeBob and Patrick are going camping, so Squidward is, excited, because, he thinks that they might get lost in the woods. Well, they never went in the woods at all. They're camping like right in the front yard. So then, Squidward, they decide that they have this like what do you call so Squidward decides to join them, and they decide, they sing their campfire songs. Gather around the campfire and sing our campfire song. Our sing it be a fire, so many song. If you don't think we sing faster than long, help it if you sing along. Goes like that. I'm not gonna sing the entire song. But yeah, that's But then, they eventually, Squidward decides to play the clarinet, and they launch a marshmallow down Squidward's, the clarinet, because playing the clarinet can attract a sea bear. That's when Patrick tells Squidward all these things that attract sea bears, and then, Squidward decides to, do like all of them at once. Then a sea bear shows up and attacks Squidward. So then, Squidward still does all these things, and the sea bear attacks Squidward.
Call from the bedroom. Everything okay down there?
and then, they eventually, Squidward gets in a sea bear circle, which, in a sea bear circle, prevents sea bears. And then, a sea rhinoceros comes, which are attracted from the sound of a sea bear. And the good news, and SpongeBob and Patrick are wearing, anti-sea bear undergarments, but Squidward isn't, and that's where the episode ends. Number one, the number one best episode of not just pre-movie SpongeBob, but the entire series of SpongeBob is New Student Starfish. So in this episode, Patrick, wants to go to boating school with SpongeBob. But then, Patrick gets SpongeBob in all of this trouble. But then, I remember there's this one joke in the episode, before I should get to that, which is the funniest part of this episode that makes it the best episode in SpongeBob history. Mrs. Puff asks Patrick what Patrick's name is. And Patrick says, 24! And then everyone starts laughing. And Mrs. Puff is like, oh great, another genius. But then, SpongeBob asks Patrick, hey Patrick, what's funnier than 24? And Patrick's like, I don't know what. And SpongeBob's like, 25. And then, Patrick starts getting SpongeBob in trouble, like he draws, this, picture of Mrs. Puff called, and names Mrs. Puff the Big Fat Meanie, but Mrs. Puff thinks it's SpongeBob because it's on SpongeBob's desk. And then SpongeBob, keeps getting in trouble, like Patrick keeps getting SpongeBob in trouble, and they decide to fight, which gets them detention. And then, they eventually make up. They have to save Roger, the class pet, which is what they call, a chicken, I think it is. And then, the light bulb goes out, and they have to give him a light bulb, or he's going to die. So yeah, they eventually, they get the light bulb and they save Roger. But then, they save, but then, eventually Mrs. Puff, gets, SpongeBob back and, is like, sees the whole thing. And she's proud of SpongeBob and Patrick. So yep, this is what I consider to be the best episode in SpongeBob history. There is no episode of SpongeBob that there is yet to be an episode of SpongeBob that is better than this episode, and I doubt that there ever will be. This is a really good episode. Please watch this episode along with the other 9 episodes on this list. And yes, I know there are 107 episodes that didn't make this list, and they're still good. They're great episodes. They just weren't good, just weren't good enough to make a top 10 for pre-movie SpongeBob. I've heard a lot of people say that that pre-movie SpongeBob has some duds. There are people who hate some pre-movie episodes, but I enjoy all of the pre-movie episodes. There is not a single one that is bad. So yes, and that's it. So thanks for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and peace out.